Hello, 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 hello. What's good, people? It's currently 4 minutes past 8 p.m. UK time, Friday, the 22nd of March 2024. Welcome to another amazing episode of NFT Fridays, which is a free weekly webinar covering everything non fungible tokens and digital assets. Every single Friday, 8 p.m. till 9 p.m. UK time since April 2022, soon approaching our 100th episode. Today, we've got a special guest. Mr. Marcus, I don't want to say your name incorrectly. How do I say it?
Bagnall.
Marcus Bagnall. I actually thought that was it, but I don't want to get it incorrect. Who will be
All good, mate.
talking with us with regards to NFT and blockchain law. Of course, we've got our big CEO, Mr. Michael Harding, co-hosting, and we've also got a special guest who's with me in person. That's Junaid.
Oh, wow.
Finally, no, finally. You've been pushing me to do this for a while. He's here now.
That is, I've got no words. You made my day. Some stuff happened earlier, and I was a little bit like, oh man, and now you've completely made my day.
We broke fast together. We prayed together. He spoke to me about how to restructure my RV loans, and I thought I was a DJ. No. Look, imagine this guy spent nearly 50% of his life in crypto as a 19-year-old.
Crazy. Right, let's do the disclaimer.
Anyway, let's get into the disclaimer and we'll get started. And obviously, Junaid and Marcus know each other, and I didn't know they knew each other. So, small world. So, for those that are unaware, at Blockchain Sensei, well, who are we? We are a Black and Asian-owned financial literacy and Web3 solutions company, approaching our 4th year into business, which is amazing. We host 3 free webinars every single week. Our Monday show is our legacy show, The Game, every single Monday, 8 p.m. till 9:30 UK time. Since 2020, that's where we cover stocks and crypto fundamentals. After Ramadan, we will be carrying on with our Crypto Sniper bootcamp in person in Manchester. So if you're interested, DM our subsidiary company, shurikensounds.eth, which I mainly run these days. NFT Fridays, of course, is today's show. And then Sundays, we have a show called Technically Speaking, where we dive into charts, data, trading, and investing. Click the link in Blockchain Sensei bio to get to our super link, superjoy.com/blockchain sensei. This is where you can find everything and anything you need, including the Zoom link to our free webinars and also our free Telegram and also our subscription service called The Dojo, where you can speak to the likes of myself and Mr. Harding most days. And we actually show you the real behind the scenes to our trading and investing accounts. Let's get into the disclaimer and then over to today's special guest, who I'm sure will bless us with a lot of amazing expertise. And of course, we're very lucky to have him here on a Friday night. So quick disclaimer, terms and conditions, all content is for education, information, and entertainment purposes only. And it should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy, sell, hold any assets, or place any trades. Please always do your own what, guys? Research. Our content is intended and should only be used for informational use only. It's very important to do your own analysis before making any investments, which should be based on your own individual circumstances. You should always take independent professional advice from a professional financial advisor. Marcus, you are an expert in your field, but are you a financial advisor? Mr. Harding? Yeah, I'm Junaid. Are you a financial advisor?
I lose money on all my trades. Please don't listen.
Don't listen to Junaid. Don't listen to Junaid. Independently research and verify all and any information you may find in our show that you may wish to rely upon, whether you wish to make an investment decision or otherwise. All investments come with what, guys? So please always do your own what, guys? Again, neither myself, today's special guest Marcus, Mr. Harding, Ken, Outspoken, and Junaid, who apparently loses all his traits, are financial advisors. However, we're working in collaboration with several accredited advisors. If you are unable to mitigate your risk, please let us know so we can refer you to an accredited financial advisor. Without further ado, I think it's time for Mr. Harding to take the floor and introduce us and start the show with our special guest.
Well, if you know anything about me, and you know anything about Ninja, and you know anything about Quiche, we love a good whiteboard. We just love a good whiteboard. And the fact that Marcus is rocking a whiteboard straight in,
All this science.
that's a big flex. Bro, you
it's real.
me.
It's not a fake background thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you've inspired me. I'm gonna have to do that. I think that's one of the biggest flexes I've ever seen on any call ever. Like whiteboard. That means you're a real thinker. So what I want to just do is say, look, thank you, massive thank yous to Marcus. He really doesn't have to be here right now. He really doesn't have to be just answering any of these questions. But really, really appreciate you taking the time out. Thank you to anyone that's tuned in on YouTube, on Twitter Live, or any of the other platforms we're live streaming to now. If you want to ask questions, either drop a message in the Telegram chat or the WhatsApp chat, or join the Zoom where you can ask questions directly. So I met Marcus courtesy of Super Team. We've been working together, working with some of the projects, just answering questions that startups have in regards to all things legal when it comes to blockchain. And that's one of the things that we started this company Blockchain Sensei for in the first place, is because we realized people were doing stuff in the space, but then when you go to your normal everyday lawyer, they didn't really know anything. When you went to your normal everyday accountant, they didn't really know anything. When you went to your normal everyday financial advisor, I'm gonna say it, they didn't know shit. So without getting that's my opinion. These are my opinions and my personal experiences, not Marcus's. And then I met Marcus and just his understanding of the blockchain space and how laws and regulations apply in this space. I thought, you know what, there's going to be a few people that we're working with. We're fortunate enough to work with a few funds. We're fortunate enough to work with a few high net worth individuals and a lot of startups that some of the things that we discuss might be of value. But before we go on to those kind of people, I want to kind of open it up on normal everyday people and the legal sides of things. So Marcus, I'm a big believer that no question is stupid. Is that a fair point, especially in the realm of legality?
Entirely fair. No such thing as a stupid question.
Brilliant. So I'm going to ask you, without it being a stupid question, what's the most common stupid question you get?
So if I think about it in sort of categories, so even just today, I was at a seminar and there was a big focus on DAOs. Mm-hmm. And so there is a bit of a disconnect between what a DAO tries to achieve versus what the legal reality is. I think we understand that we want to democratize and decentralize and to have the code regulate what's going on. But the reality is that if you want to have an organization or a body that has arms and legs, that wants to do things that are enforceable, where you yourself want to be separated from what that organization is doing, there comes a point when what you want to achieve meets reality. And so quite a few questions come out from a structuring perspective where I end up saying, okay, but what do you really want to achieve here? What's going to be more important? And some things that usually are important is, I don't want to pay so much tax. I don't want to pay or be liable if anything goes wrong. Or if there is an issue, I want something else over here to bear that responsibility, to be the vehicle that holds that obligation, and that's separate from me. And so if you think about questions along these lines instead, you usually get to a more sensible position. but the starting point usually is something else, and you kind of have to get over there.
And what would you say? I'm going to ask a question that I get asked a lot, which is when it comes to crypto, if I register a business here and I take crypto payments here, and then I move to another country, this is kind of accounting and legal, right? And then I move to another country and set up that business in that other country, now I can just take out my money and everything's all good. Have you heard scenarios or questions like this before?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not a accountant or a tax lawyer, but I'll have a go. So the scenario that you've just described, it intersects with a couple of different areas of law. One important area is, of course, tax. So what each country or each jurisdiction has in place in terms of whether you are a tax resident, what is recognized as income, what is recognized as capital gains, for example. How is the relevant token considered from a tax perspective? And so taking into account those things, that might lead you to a particular conclusion, whether, for example, you're able to move from country A to B and then to structure things in a tax efficient fashion to avoid being, for example, double taxed, or to avoid maybe paying more tax in jurisdiction 2 than you would have if you stayed in jurisdiction 1. So part of that involves having that effective tax plan in the beginning before you do things. It's usually a good idea to try to get that advice early. And that way, when you set things up, you've already chosen a tax effective jurisdiction. You've already got a tax effective vehicle to go ahead and do your things. So that when you actually go about moving money around, moving crypto, creating accounts, doing different parts in your business, when it comes to extracting that or doing things and moving things around, you can do it in a tax effective way. Because otherwise, unfortunately, from things that I've seen in the scenario that you have described, sometimes people can get caught out, or it's only a matter of time until maybe there's an audit, or maybe there is some ability for regulators, authorities to share information and eventually find out, well, actually, you did make a massive gain because that particular crypto moved this year, didn't it? And so when you took it out, there's a massive difference between what it is now and what it was when you got it in the first place. So as an example, again, I'm not a tax lawyer, but in the UK, given how crypto is treated, if you do find yourself in a position where there is an increase in the value of that token between when you bought it and when you take it out, that will be considered as a capital gain to you. But then obviously the rules are different in every country, and the rules are different depending on the nature of the particular activity. So whether it's something that comes from a DeFi or staking will be different from just the increase or decrease in the price of a token. So it does also kind of depend on the nature of what's going on as well.
Nice.
So I guess the overall advice is just make sure you get the planning done early to avoid any surprises.
Get your house in order, basically.
Yeah, 100%.
Basically. So what would you say for someone completely brand new? Let's say, for example, we've got a student, they've just bought their first crypto, or they're thinking about buying their first bit of crypto, or they're thinking about buying this NFT because everyone else is buying it. What legal considerations should an absolute beginner think of when stepping into Web3?
So is this the perspective of someone that wants to buy crypto, or is it maybe you're a founder that wants to establish a new project and you want to raise some funds using tokens?
Well, it was more from a founder point of view, but
okay,
you've got an answer for both. Give us the answer for both.
Yeah. Okay. So from a UK perspective, when it comes to buying crypto or trading with it or making offers, at the moment there are very clear rules around restrictions on promotions of crypto assets, and the reason for that is crypto is considered a high risk investment. It is an investment because it's buying an asset, and so there's particular warnings and rules and procedures that must be in place before you can receive it. there's also restrictions around who is able to offer them or to promote them. So, for example, anyone that wants to make tokens available would need to be registered or be authorized, or otherwise go through someone that is. And the reason for that is because it is considered high risk. It's volatile. Unfortunately, there are plenty of examples over the years of people losing substantial sums of money, or maybe there was a particular promotion that wasn't entirely exactly what they described, or maybe the conditions, or once you read the fine print, or when you realize that the protections you thought you had weren't there, it unfortunately has led to many losing quite a bit of money. And again, due to the nature of how these things are set up, for example, could be a protocol or a project that's based overseas, or maybe it wasn't clear who the offeror of the token was, it has led to those issues. So when it comes to considering a token project or looking to buy, as someone who's getting into it for the first time, it's really important to do your research, be aware of the risk, find out whatever information is available regarding the token before you dive in. At a minimum these days, you'd expect that there must be a white paper. The white paper should explain the tokenomics. It should give you a sense of what they're about. Maybe there's particular utility or projects or things that they're going to be doing. You can also get a sense from just market information. Again, this is not financial advice, but it's important to do your research before diving into that. And then equally, say on the other perspective, if you're a founder and you're looking to support your project with a token or a token raise, again, from the flip side, there's sort of minimum information that you need to be preparing. Investors would expect that they are able to ask these questions to verify the nature of the project and the protocol. They might want particular protections. So if you're trying to raise funds in advance of a token generation event, they're going to want particular assurances, or they want to know when the event is going to be, what the overall supply might be, so they can assess the amount that they're willing to contribute to your project. So there'll be things that'll be driven by what investors demand, given their particular risk profile or risk appetite. And then, of course, when it comes to you promoting that token or seeking to get people to participate, again, back to the earlier comment, there are restrictions in the UK when it comes to that. So you need to make sure that you comply with those rules. The rules are very stringent. Again, principally, those rules do require that those making promotions are either FCA authorized or you go through someone that is. So yeah, so depending on which stage we're at, there are a number of pretty fundamental considerations to keep in mind.
Nice. So when it comes to structuring my business, so are you basically saying that if I'm Joe Blogs and I decide, you know what, everyone's got a token, I can't just go and make a token and start selling it to my mates?
Yeah, so I think a few considerations here. One is that you should think about which jurisdiction that you want to have, one, the ownership, and two, the issuer of the token, because those two things are going to be different. And those two things will impact your tax position and also the compliance requirements for promoting and making available that token. So there's particular jurisdictions around the world that tend to be, more useful than others. The UK, unfortunately, has a fairly restrictive regime, and just to be frank, there are other jurisdictions where you can get better tax outcomes. So for that reason, the UK tends to not be a popular choice when it comes to, for example, locating your foundation or DAO, in part because of tax reasons. The second part is there isn't really recognition of a DAO in this country. So other jurisdictions are usually a better choice when it comes to considering launching a token or considering supporting your project with a token raise. And the other is that when it comes to issuing and promoting people to participate, there are again clear restrictions here. So again, there are restrictions here. There are some exceptions, but again, in the main, if you do want to be promoting it, you do need to be authorized or using an authorized person.
So if I'm Joe Blogs and I decide to create a token and I now have my token available, I technically can't promote it unless I'm following the FinProm rules, or, well, it's not even if I'm following the rules, unless I'm authorized by the government to promote my token.
Yeah, so the FinProm rules require that someone that wants to make a financial promotion in relation to a crypto asset, which presumably the token will be considered to be that, then unless you follow those rules, that promotion will be unauthorized. And there could be some pretty serious consequences, including potentially criminal offenses. So, it's fairly stringent. And the reason for that being introduced, it was fairly recent. It was only came into effect in October last year. And the reason for that was there were just far too many instances of promotions gone wrong, effectively scams, people describing things in a way that just simply wasn't true. The thinking was that, well, actually, instead, to protect consumers, to ensure the integrity of the market, we need to make sure that those that are making risk promotions are going to be doing it in a responsible way. And part of that is to ensure that, well, those that are authorized need to comply with particular requirements. And
Hang on a minute. Bobby, if you just mute your mic for us there. Thank you, buddy. Hang on a minute, let me mute Bobby. Oh. Yes, me neither. Oh, well, unfortunately, I'm going to have to remove Bobby and he's going to have to come back in. There you go. All right, cool. Yeah, where did we go to? That's interesting. So you can't just start a token and just start promoting it, which is interesting, because I definitely know. No, I'm not going to finish the rest of that sentence. So how does it, if you
so for example, last month the FCA, so the Financial Conduct Authority, they released some statistics, some latest data around compliance with the regime. So you can check out the website. I'm happy to share a link. So the FCA, they reported to say, look, here's all the investigations we've done. Here's all of the particular sites we've been told to be taken down. Here's the enforcement notices we've sent out. And there is still a pretty high level of non-compliance from their perspective. Non-compliance from the perspective of people making promotions when they don't have the authorization to do so. And also people making promotions but not doing it in a way which complies with the rules. So for example, there's minimum risk notices. So for example, one of the requirements is that if you do want to have that, you have to have particular warnings given to people. But those warnings have to be specific to the actual asset being promoted. So one way in which people have been found to be non-compliant is if the notice was too generic. So those notices need to be customized to the risk profile that's relevant to whatever is being promoted. It's also the reason why, for example, if you use some of the major exchanges that are available in the UK, you might have noticed that from a particular point last year, you started to see these warnings. You started to see these pop-ups, across your browser or your phone. And when you look at each asset, there's just a lot more information. There's a lot more warnings. There's a lot more stuff you can read, and that's a direct result from the change in the regulations.
Yes. And also now it's asking you to do these mini exams on most of these exchanges as well. That we're all seeing.
And just to unpack that for a second, so the reason for that is there are additional requirements on those that are allowed to do this to make sure they've got checks in place. So because there are some exemptions available if the particular person is maybe a high net worth individual or they've got a high income, but the but in this case, the exchanges need to come up with their own way of complying with the requirements on them. So in these cases that you mentioned, some have decided, right, in order to verify whether or not someone has the financial competence to understand what's going on, we're going to set them a mini exam. And so if they pass this exam, and if they say that they are who they say they are, and they have the net worth and all the assets that they say they are, then this is how we're going to prove to the FCA that we're complying with the rules.
Do you reckon we'll get to a stage where being a sophisticated investor doesn't just mean that you've got over 500K?
I think I think the rules are going to continue to evolve. I think that, I mean, this is still a fairly new development. So they affect, so what's effectively happened is that there's an existing regime regarding FinProms for equities, for other securities, and they've just expanded it over to crypto assets. There is some additional guidance from the FCA, and look, I don't work for the government, but it wouldn't surprise me if at some point in the future we're going to review how this actually operated, and maybe what we actually need is actually a crypto-specific regime. Maybe it might be decided that, you know what, this is too restrictive, because part of the government's desire is to be creating an environment where the UK is an attractive jurisdiction for crypto. We want to make ourselves a crypto hub. And I wouldn't put it past people if they say, you know what, we'll look at the stats, we've seen how much business has been driven away, or we've seen how the market's responded. Maybe we need a different approach. So I wouldn't put it past them, but we'll just have to see.
What's your thoughts on, well, some people say thoughts, some people want to hear facts, but I want to see thoughts. What's your thoughts on what a token is and what a security is? Because that's the big one that we get asked all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, we get asked that question too. It is a critical dividing line between whether or not a particular regime applies to something. So yeah, it comes down to what particular rights might be associated with the token. So if you think about what a security is, right, like a share, yeah. So if you own a share, what do you get? You get stuff like, you get rights to dividends, you get the ability to vote as a shareholder, as defined by whatever class of shares we're talking about. And if the company is wound up, then you also get the right to participate in the assets upon the winding up, or whatever is decided after the creditors are paid, etc. So, but what it means is it represents a bundle of rights that you have as the owner of that asset. Yeah. And so when it comes to tokens exist on a spectrum. We've seen all sorts, right? All the way from, meme coins that have zero utility, unfortunately, zero utility. If you own a meme coin or that type of class of token, there is no appreciable asset or rights that you have attached to that. It's a ledger entry in a particular protocol. That's about it. All the way through in the other end, where you have some very sophisticated tokens where it promises you that, say, right, if you hold this, you get the right to participate in, you get the right to vote in something, you get the right to receive, particular effectively royalties or dividends from a particular project, or you get the right to get some particular benefit. And it isn't some third party promise to you. It is, if you own the token, you get that. Maybe through a smart contract, maybe through whatever it might be. Yeah. And so it's those sorts of tokens where you've got to say, you know what, looks and smells like a share. It has the intrinsic characteristics that are consistent with a security. And therefore it's likely to be treated as such.
That's where that how saying, if it looks like a duck and barks like a duck, duck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so essentially a security is something that promises you something, and a token is something that just doesn't do anything.
I mean, that's one way to think about it, maybe in practical terms. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, so if you think about, so how a crypto asset, a regulated crypto asset is defined, so that is defined in law. It's defined for the purposes of determining whether or not someone dealing with those assets, for example, if you're an exchange or if you provide custodial wallet services and stuff in relation to that, then if you're dealing with a regulated token, then you then need to then consider whether you are providing a regulated service in relation to it. Yeah, but it does turn on, it being a store of value and what rights are given to the token holder.
So if that's the concept is that you will be given this, is this why people are thinking that Ethereum is a security? Because when you stake it, you are then given X back. Is that why people think it's a security, or what's your thoughts? What's your understanding of that?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to those examples, we need to be really clear about who is offering or doing what. So, because it is quite possible to structure things to separate or to fragment who is exactly doing what. It's also possible to structure things to fragment what the rights are or what the benefits or promises are being offered here. If McDonald's, for example, offered a free milkshake to every BMW driver, right, then this is not a right that every BMW driver has, right? If you own a BMW, you don't go, hey, as part of my asset, I also can go to McDonald's and get a free milkshake. It's just it's a unilateral thing that McDonald's offers to BMW drivers. They can withdraw at any time. It isn't BMW is not offering it; it's McDonald's, right? But nor is it part of the asset, right? So there are ways there are projects out there where if you dive into the details, right, it might be the case that actually the owner of the asset is not actually receiving that benefit as a right as the owner, right? However, a third party might go, okay, if you make available your asset, you include it, you agree to include it in our staking pool, then we will promise to provide you a particular return or particular yield, right? And so, but that yield has got nothing to do with Ethereum, as in terms of that being something which is inherent in the token itself. Okay. And that might also have nothing to do with whoever it was that you got the token from in the first place. So someone can issue a token on Ethereum, and then the owner of that then agrees to make it available for staking in another pool, right? So you've got different parties doing different things. So sorry to complicate the answer to that question, but it does really depend on who exactly is doing what. And it's going to also turn on, well, what are we trying to achieve here? And for example, if someone's trying to limit their regulatory exposure to obligations, it may make sense to structure it one way over the other.
So my final question will be on NFTs. So a big thing that we see in the NFT space is literally people cut and pasting someone's image from an NFT and then re-releasing it as an NFT on a different chain. Or even sometimes they have the cheek to launch it on the exact same chain. Like, and obviously we work with a few musicians. What's the best way for a musician that's launching their, or even not even a musician, just somebody launching something as an NFT and then seeing that someone's copied it on the same chain or a different chain? What's the best steps?
So so let's say an NFT, which is an image, right? So if we break it down, let's say I created the image, it's mine, right? So as the owner of the image, I have copyright to that, and it's inherent in its creation. And if I then mint an NFT and I associate that image with the NFT, then what it does boil down to is, well, what rights do I then associate with the NFT? Because if I then mint the NFT and then sell it to someone, right, then what the recipient of the NFT would expect is that, well, actually, I need some sort of license to the copyright in the image, yeah? And so what's important in that scenario is if you're the person minting, you've got to consider, well, what exactly am I giving away here? And if you're buying an NFT or looking at a traded NFT, you should really interrogate the metadata to be really clear around, well, yes, I'm getting a token, but what exactly am I getting in terms of IP rights? Because those two things are separate. We've seen quite a few interesting projects where they're trying to sort of merge the ideas, or somehow, for example, the IP is somehow inherent in the token, or the token is a way to verify, or as part of how the copyright is instantiated, so created. But these things are still pretty novel, and it'll still be the case where if it goes, in front of a judge, they're going to have a particular view. So I think in the main, it's really important to consider separately, the NFT itself, and then what rights or licenses are then associated with that, to make sure that the person receiving it has the right they think they're getting. And the same would go for images or music and other things which are also subject to those sorts of rights.
Nice. Okie dokie. Let's open it up to the audience. So let's go around the room and see if there's any questions. Praveen, I believe you are new. Praveen, thank you for joining us. Do you have any questions for Marcus?
Yeah, thanks. Marcus, your example of the secondary holders when they're staking, for example, like, would they be considered in any way issuing security, since they're using it for a different purpose? Like, for example, right, if I buy a car and I sell the car, I'm only, creating a property transaction. But in your case, in your example, it sounds like they might be putting a new use case that wasn't initially foreseen by the initial token creator. So maybe the initial token creator, perhaps, would they be not subject to security rules, but the secondary person who created the new use case, would they possibly be issuing a security then?
I think so. So yes. So not necessarily securities law, but certainly financial services law. So what the secondary provider here could be doing, and this is an ongoing debate, right? Because those that want to promote, DeFi arrangements, they're obviously complaining, say, look, if this goes too far, this will kill the entire basis to offer DeFi. But as not kill it, but it'll, burden it with FS obligations, which, currently others comply with, but it'll be very burdensome for DeFi providers. But certainly, so yes, I think it's likely in that scenario that if you offer that sort of staking yield return, that would be subject to financial services requirements.
Wow. Wild. Thank you very much.
So the underlying token stays the same. So the underlying token is not a security, then that's not going to change. But if you then offer these particular services in relation to it on top of it, or using it, then it is those services, or maybe the creation of, for example, if that's allowed to be contributed to a pool and people can participate in it by offering their tokens to be part of that pool, and in return, you then get a particular yield as a fraction of what that pool would give out, then you may have created either one or both of a financial service and or financial product.
Nice.
Great, thank you. And if you have time, I was wondering what your background is. Looks like you got some cool little DeLoreans and Star Wars stuff back there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so got a bit of a Lego collection. So there's a stormtrooper head. Very proud of this guy. Right. Yeah, and there's a DeLorean. So yeah, that's from Back to the Future. Great series. And there's also Superstar Destroyer and the ISS. So yeah, a bit of a diehard Lego fan here.
A bit of a diehard Lego fan and a bit of a diehard Star Wars fan, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay,
100%.
totally off subject, but what's your favorite Star Wars movie?
Oh, I mean, I do still like the original series, as in the original. Of the kind of spin-off movies, I think Rogue One is pretty good.
You know what?
It's a
Rogue
tight
One is
story.
actually my favorite. Like,
Yeah,
so underrated. I would go
Oh yeah,
Rogue One and then Revenge of the Sith. Like Rogue One, that ending, I didn't see it coming,
yeah,
and I was like,
yeah. Yeah, and like I until I saw it, I don't really get into the fan fiction or the lore, so I didn't really know where they would go. So and I loved how the ending kind of segued almost perfectly into the beginning of episode 4. So
yeah,
yeah, I think it's very well done.
yeah, first. Let's go for another question. Mr. Ken Wills, you've been unmuted. Do you have a question?
Nah, mate, I'm okay. I'm just listening. Yeah, listening and learning.
Cool. Oh, Praveen, I didn't ask. How did you find out about today's webinar? Did you find it on the Telegram, the WhatsApp?
Yeah, the Telegram.
Oh, sweet. And then let's go to Rue. Rue, I'm guessing you're calling all the way from South Africa.
No, I'm back in the UK now from 1st of March. So yeah, which is funky.
Good. I'll see you.
Yeah, I'll ask
Monday
a
then, right?
question. So if you were to inherit a project from someone that had a token, and they don't want to do the project anymore, I think it's a big thing for historic projects. They might start out as scams. There's historic NFT projects which people kind of take over and build out further and then effectively revive them. But if you were one of those founding teams who decided, look, I don't want to be doing this anymore, I want someone to take it over, so I'm going to give them our founding tokens or the majority of them, and then take a back seat effectively. When it comes to inheritance, of those tokens and effectively the previous running of that organization, what are the standpoints? Is it that it cuts off and you're a new kind of thing, or is it or you inherit all of the legacy, let's say?
So when you say inherit, how do you mean by that? So how are you or how are we inheriting this?
Well,
What's the passion for inheritance?
So the founding team don't want to. They've been overwhelmed by it. They took on like a leadership position, and it turns out that no, they just don't want a leadership position. They want to have a reduced position in the project and it's like in any organization. People might start as a CEO and then they're like, oh well, actually I would be better in a research role or whatever. So kind of that similar scenario, but I'm just wondering what the legalities are around that kind of thing happening.
I think so. Are we talking, is this pre or post token generation?
Post, but there are also future token generations across different chains. So it's a multi-chain kind of project with chains that have been launched, and then there will be future chains. So the future chains, I understand, cool, like that kind of sets it's kind of a new a starting point. But I'm just wondering about, okay, cool, for the previous chains, they're giving up their token allocations to the new people who are taking over, then that same kind of you are inheriting a token allocation, but I suppose you're not inheriting the way that they ran the organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a lot to unpack there. Some of that will depend on, I guess, the nature of any obligations or restrictions that might have been around. If there aren't any to really speak of, then it might be a case of, look, if there's a previous allocation to people, there may be limited ability to, for example, claw it back or to address that. But equally, there would be, on the same basis, nothing particularly stopping you from taking a bit in a new direction. It also goes down to quite a number of scenarios where you're tossing up between, look, do we look at going down the path of equity or tokens? Because part of that is down to the question of how do we manage the risk of the project succeeding? Do we want control over the outcomes? Do we want a position to be able to help decide what goes on? And so if the decision by, for example, the investors at the time is to go, look, we'll just go tokens and not equity, then you are kind of relinquishing that ability to influence the outcome from a decision point of view. But then
Understood.
I guess if you're coming in for that sort of project to see if you can reinvigorate it or re-enliven it, assuming that there are no particular restrictions around what's going on, unless there's some skeletons in the closet, where, if there's some in past liability or some issue in the past, there may be a desire to sort of try to ring fence that. But other than that, if you're coming in, just do your due diligence to make sure there's nothing like that. But there shouldn't be anything from stopping you from taking a different direction.
Interesting. I was told I'm gonna wrap up there, but I just had a very, very meta thought that I just want to run by everybody in the audience and yourself. Technically, does anyone actually own their tokens or NFTs? Because the actual registered company for Ethereum, for Solana, for Bitcoin, for whatever blockchain is, wouldn't everything that exists on that software belong to the owner and original creator of that software?
Is a question for the floor? I'm happy to have a go.
Question for the floor. I want to know people's thoughts. Ninja, what's your thoughts on that?
Me too.
Sure.
Yeah, I have a thought. I think this came up with Block One. I'm sorry, someone's gonna speak.
Praveen, you were going first.
Yeah, remember when Block One, when they did their ICO from Ethereum, they said it was a sale of software to the community. So they developed, their core blockchain software, and they sold it to the community supposedly for $4.3 billion. So from that point of view, it was they said they're software developers, and then they paid a fine of just $20 million or so to the SEC to clear up any sort of paperwork faults in that transaction. But they did that way back in the day. If they did that today, it would be I'm sure it'd be a multi-billion-dollar fine. So the best thing they did for themselves and their investors, because they had regular investors in India and other places as well, was basically admitting guilt before the SEC really started cracking down on people.
Interesting.
Ninja, yeah, but now there's a class action lawsuit in Canada against the founders too, because the new Antelope developers who took over the foundations for US, they're not happy with all this stuff going on, which they shouldn't be.
Interesting. Ninja, you were going to say something. I know you're busy talking to Jay, but I'm sure you can hear me. Or is he muted it? He's muted it. Yeah, Marcus, what's your thoughts? Because I'm thinking to myself, technically, you're not buying tokens. Technically, you're just buying bits of software from someone else's software that they've allowed you to use. And legally, that software is registered to them and their company.
No, it's a good question. And so the law in England and Wales and under common law has, over the past sort of 10 years, been incrementally recognizing crypto assets as personal property. So it is property, right? So you can own it, right? It is yours. It is not just software, because software, as you say, is you get a bundle of license rights. It's people that write. So someone wrote the code. It's made available to you on a limited basis. There are things you can and can't do with it, but it's not property, right? It's a license to do stuff on a limited basis. You're allowed to have the code and allow it to be on your system or on your computer, but it's not. You don't own it. You don't own software. You have the right to use it, but you don't own it. It is different for crypto assets. So the law in the UK recognizes it as property. So it's alongside, physical things. You can possess it, right? So that's one. So things in possession, that's one category. Another thing is like a right, like a debt, for example. You can require someone to do something. So you can't hold it. It's not physical, but it's an enforceable thing against someone, right against someone else. Yeah. And so a crypto asset is neither of those things. You can't physically hold it, but nor is it just simply a right that you enforce. Right? It is actually, a notional quantity unit on a consensus-based distributed ledger, right? And it's rivalrous. Yeah. So if you own a particular NFT, no one else can own it, right? There's only one, and so there's elements there's elements that define crypto that are very distinct from pure software or just mere software. So yeah, so the short answer is yes, it is different, and you can certainly own it. It is property.
Okay, interesting. Right. So in conclusion, Ninja's back now. He's back.
What did you say?
Yeah, I wanted to know if you had a thought or an opinion on what I said. Controversial thought.
This is my non-financial advice opinion. In my head, crypto is nobody's. So, like, I don't own any crypto in any of these decentralized wallets, because how are they mine? Where's the legal? What's legally binding me and my Phantom? What's legally binding me and my MetaMask? If I create a MetaMask and receive 1,000 USDC and then meme coin it and then have 10,000 USDC, until I take that out into the real world, I could be wrong, but I see it as nobody's, because what if I forget in the morning? What if I forget the private key?
Or even better,
Or I
just made
suffer
me
from
realize
dementia.
which relates to the tornado cash situation. So you can get put on the American CIA watch list if you got funds that have come from tornado cash, right? But what if someone just puts those funds in your wallet because they've got your wallet address? Like, so let's say, for example, I've got a wallet and Ninja or Jay or Junaid decide to put £1 million worth of Bitcoin or Solana or whatever in my wallet. That's not my fault. Or is it, Marcus?
No, it's not your fault. That's how the system works. But
if someone puts assets in my wallet, am I now considered as the one that owns it?
So think about it also in terms of, let's say if you have a bank account, right, and someone deposits money into your regular bank account, right? Is that money yours?
Oh.
How's it different?
It becomes yours
now,
when you do something with it, right?
So is the money yours? Now, obviously, there's a number of rules to, for example, let's say if there is a mistake, so if it was sent to you by mistake, then there's laws, thankfully, that regulate what happens. You need to give a remedy. If you go off and spend it, and you know it's not yours, then you should actually repay it. There's also considerations for if there is any money laundering, proceeds of crime, fraud, that type of activity. There's rules around that. But the first question and the answer to that is the same, right? And also, I think it is important that crypto is considered to be property, because a lot of important things are now arising from it. So, for example, let's say if you get hacked and someone steals it, someone takes it from you, right? So if someone takes what is yours and it's stolen from you, then because it's your property, then you have rights to enforce against the world, right? So if anyone has stolen it, it doesn't matter that there wasn't a pre-existing contract between you and that person, for example. It isn't like they breached something. They've taken what is yours. They've infringed your property rights. Yeah. That's important, because the same should happen for crypto. Or let's say if you want to bring a claim against someone, right, then in what jurisdiction do you bring that claim, right? So again, for property, if you live in the UK or you live somewhere there, then you can go to your local court and commence an action for that. That's important. So we should also recognize that. So I think there are a number of things that would support the conclusion that, well, we do and should recognize crypto as property, because that's going to be important to ensure that the important, economic activity that crypto is supporting is going to be maintained.
Nice. I love that answer. Right. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just a quick one on that. With like decentralized finance, I mean, obviously, like in enforcing like so let's say we've got the FCA in obviously normal finance, and like you have some protections against losses, but obviously like with stuff that isn't centralized, then how would someone get back any of that money? What protect? They have no protections really, do they? Like, so how does it work? Because obviously, if someone takes your money, if someone takes your Bitcoin, then that's that gone with.
Yeah, so DeFi, it does raise some, let's say, sort of complex regulatory questions. It really does come down to the details of each one. You need to look at its structure, what it's actually doing, what it's promising to the participants. I also find that it also exists on a spectrum. So sometimes things are not as decentralized as what they say. It might only apply to a particular element, whereas some things still remain quite centralized. And so part of it is like, it depends. And then also, if there is activity going on, then maybe there's a component where it may be difficult to determine or to lock down the particular jurisdiction where that's happening, but there'll be other components in what the overall, whatever it might be. I mean, we should talk about an example, but there might be other components where actually no, that part of it is going to be regulated in this country, and so the focus might be on getting that particular part right. So yeah, unfortunately, the answer to that question is it depends. And yeah, but then also, if you think about it from the other perspective, let's say something does go wrong, right? The consumer, you, me, anyone, we've allowed our tokens to be participating in a particular pool or a DeFi, protocol, and for whatever reason we lose our money. Where do we go from the remedy? Who should provide us the remedy? Who do we interact with? Who held things out to us? Who is supposed to be responsible? Who had control over what's going on? Who breached an obligation? All those things have to be determined. And no doubt the regulator, the government, is going to want to ensure that someone, somewhere, is responsible for providing that remedy.
Interesting. Okay. So in conclusion, if somebody wants to contact you, find you, need some legal help, advice, or your legal services, where do they find you? How's best to get in contact?
Yeah, so you can look me up online. So just Google my name, Marcus Bagnall. We have a website at my law firm. Also find me on LinkedIn and Telegram, Table821.
Perfect. We will put your LinkedIn and Telegram in all of our chats, and in that way people can reach out to you. Thank you ever so much for your time. It was meant to be half an hour, but you've given us an hour, so we are eternally grateful. And I think Blockchain Sensei maybe inquiring about having you as an additional lawyer on our side. So you can never have too many lawyers, I believe. So,
awesome.
yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Perfect. No worries, buddy. Thank you very much. Speak soon.
Great. Thank you. Thanks
a
a lot.
Bye, 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 bye.
Thanks, guys.